doing, everybody? Welcome in to the Maize and Blue Reviews. Good afternoon, Michigan football. June the 25th, Michigan has just landed a verbal commitment for the 2026 year, their 13th commitment, and it's been a good week, and it's just going to continue if you feel like it's a good week when Michigan is able to land commitments, highly rated commitments to their football team. And if I believe that is good news and good for the program, and if you feel the same way, then we are on the same wavelength, and you are in the right spot. And that is watching this show. We talk a lot about Michigan, almost exclusively about Michigan. And there's a Michigan basketball player tonight, the Wolf of State Street, that is expected to be picked in the first round of the NBA draft. We will speculate on where Danny Wolf will be picked, and I'll tell you where I think the best situation is for Mr. Wolf. We'll get to that. One of the gambling sites has made an adjustment on the season total for Michigan. It was 8.5. They've moved it up to 9.5. On Monday, we were discussing what Michigan's record is going to be for this upcoming season. I want to see where everyone else is at out there. It's a question of the day for all of you. What kind of record do you think Michigan is going to post this upcoming season? And you probably already know what you think, whether it's 12-0, 11-1, wherever you're at. But if you get to 10 wins, there's a very good chance that Michigan will end up in the college football playoff. So keep that in mind while you're making your prediction out there. I'm interested in hearing from you, but we start with that big news. And the big news is that Michigan has gone ahead and received a commitment from Zion Robinson, the top-ranked wide receiver in Texas. The 6'4" wideout is, in fact, a Michigan man. He was holding up a sign when he came in for his official visit that he was a Michigan man, and he has come through with that, and he is part of this recruiting class with a fellow wideout, Jayan Pyle, who was visiting over this past weekend. And Robinson, I watched a little bit of film from the 6'4" wideout, and he was his first video he had posted up there. He snagged in a 20-yard touchdown. So he was down there in the red zone. He high pointed it with one arm and pulled it in. I was like, I don't need to see anything else. That's great. But I did watch more of Robinson. He's a slender 6'4", and he's a long strider. That's great. I don't know. He looked pretty fast. I mean, he was making a lot of 5-yard catches and taking them the distance. He's got moves. I mean, looks like he's got it all. And you start thinking of, well, who does he remind you of, that kind of stuff. And, you look to the pros, and there are a lot of big wide receivers, but I would say, I am not saying, because, Randy Moss might be the greatest wide receiver to ever play after Jerry Rice. In fact, I would put him number 2 on my list all time. But Zion Robinson is built like Randy Moss. A lot of legs and a long strider like Moss. So I think he has a build like Moss, and he runs like Randy Moss. I'll be interested to see. I don't know what kind of 40 time that Robinson has posted there in high school, but there's not much higher praise than you can give a guy. And I'm just talking about how he looks out there on the field. Who knows how somebody will run out and say, oh, he's comparing him to Randy Moss. In some ways, his build and the way he runs, I am. But, you see the big wideouts in the NFL. The former Wolverine, Nico Collins, who is down playing for the Texans. Nico might be 6'5", but and he's got a little bit of a build to him. Some of the 6'4" and up wide receivers you think about in the NFL, Cortland Sutton from the Broncos, T. Higgins from the Bengals, and Drake London from the Falcons. All of those guys are 6'4" and above. I think all of them actually, except even Nico, when I looked at him, was listed at 6'4", although I've seen him listed at 6'5". I don't know if Robinson has that build. He's more slender than the guys that I was just talking about. But look, he's only in high school, so that's the thing. You're able to put on a little bit of size there, and maybe he physically looks a lot more like those wide receivers. I don't know. I was looking again. One of my favorite wide receivers, non-Michigan wideouts of all time, A.J. Green out of Georgia. Played a long time, almost his entire career with Cincinnati. It reminds me of A.J. Green. So there it is. High praise for Zion Robinson. Like him, like the way he looks. Michigan looks like they got a really good one. And you can't emphasize enough, we have mentioned it almost every time out. You get to Bryce Underwood. Great players want to play with other great players, and you get out there and you have these guys come in and they meet Bryce Underwood. They go out and catch some passes from Bryce Underwood. They talk to Bryce Underwood, and they start saying, "I want to play with Bryce Underwood." And Zion Robinson, in fact, has done that, and he will do that as he's committed to Michigan. So nothing but great news there for the Maize and Blue. And this comes on the heels of some great news just a day or two ago with Titan Davis, a defensive end out of Missouri, came down to Michigan and Alabama. And in the old days, like 2-3 years ago, and before that, Michigan would seem like they would always lose out to Alabama for a player from the South, from a player who's pretty highly rated. They would almost always, you could bet on, end up going to Alabama. But those days are over. Michigan has everything, and they can compensate even more than Alabama can. And, it's boo-hoo if you're a Crimson Tide fan, because they were, for years, able to step up and deal some cash. It felt like that under the table. I don't know. I think we all feel like that. But it doesn't matter. It's over the table now, and Bama is not able to compete that way. But Titan Davis, you love the name. Michigan's got some great names. Blade in this particular recruiting class, and now Titan. And then I was just thinking, looking at Titan Davis, 6'5", 255, defensive end, highly rated kid out of St. Louis, that if I was younger and was just expecting a baby with my wife, and she said, what do you think of the name Titan? Titan Fithian. I would say, you know what? It's got a great ring to it. It's got the A-N at the end. My last name, I-A-N at the end, in my surname, and then F-I, it's a T-I, so it's got some alliteration there. If I was an expected father and we needed a name, I'd be like, Titan Fithian sounds great. So Titan Davis, he's number 12 for Michigan, and Zion Robinson, the number 1 ranked wide receiver in the Lone Star State. That's just happened over the last hour, where he pledged to go to Michigan as the future cast, the forecast, the machines, whatever else goes on there, started rolling in for the Maize and Blue. And, you, of course, feel pretty good if you're a Michigan fan and you're following the game of recruiting. That's what's happening. So, yeah, it's a fun day. Jerry Diario always comes on here. When he comes on here, he says, it's weird when my phone's like listening to me. It's Jerry always says, "Great to be a Wolverine," Denny. And I say, I hear what he's saying. Today is a great day, to be a Michigan fan, as they are able to pull in another verbal commitment, and that's 2 this week, and they've got more. I mean, it's just they're coming in. It's fast and furious. You got to really be able to keep track, and we'll get to how this next week or so is going to unfold. And it's one of these where you just sit back and you just love it. As a recruiting fan, you're always, as soon as you get one, you want another one, and it looks like that's what's going to happen. You can't plan it out where you're like, oh, I'd like to get one here, and then a day or two later, get another one, then get another one, then get another one. But that looks like how it's playing out. That I think if we could sit in Sharon Moore's office and say, Sharon, and you looks like you got this guy today, you got that guy yesterday, you got this guy today, you got another one tomorrow. Looks like later this week, and then they're just falling. And whether you have dominoes or how the calendar unfolds, and I think Sharon Moore would be like, you're right. We can't play it out like that. You have to let it play out the way it goes. But yes, he would understand what I'm saying, because that's what it looks like is going to happen. Now, I like, if you're somebody new to the channel here, we're live 3 times a week at 2:00 on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And I read all the messages and I put them up on the screen, and we were able to go through. So if you have a point, if you have a question, you can get to it. And I do have a question of the day, and that is, what do you think Michigan's record is going to be? So you can go ahead and put that up there. It'd be interesting to see what you guys have to say about Michigan's record this year. In the meantime, we've got basketball ahead, and we're working through recruiting right now, with Michigan able to get Zion Robinson, ZR at WR, wide receiver. He is a good one. How about it? Coming up on Friday, Michigan is in a recruiting battle with Georgia and Texas for Hawaii tackle Malachi Lee. Now, they're also in a battle with Texas with Ojo, and I thought all along they could get one of them. That would be great. I don't have a great read on Lee. Like, I'm not ready to say, oh, yeah, but Michigan is in with a chance. Maybe he has not made his decision yet, but I think you might feel pretty good if you're a U of M fan about Michigan's chances. Does it matter that, they've got him coming in, so then you feel like you could feel like that as a fan? I don't know. Maybe Zion Robinson is on the phone. Maybe Bryce Underwood is on his phone, and maybe they're, sending him messages. Maybe they're, hitting up his eye. I don't know. I would think that they would be doing all those sort of things, but Michigan is, they want him, and we're ready to find out and see if they'll be able to get him on Friday. That's what's coming up for Lee out of Hawaii. It looks like Newsom and Moore had a good time out there in Hawaii visiting them. That, you could smile. There's your regular smile, and then there's your Hawaii smile. Look at these guys. They're looking pretty good. Tough job. Now, it is a tough job. You got to do a lot of flying around and everything. But look, going out to Hawaii, that's a recruiting trip that you want to make. Okay, so then June the 30th, which is right around the corner. And what is that? That's coming up to be this Monday. This Monday, Andre Clark Jr. and Clark is down to Michigan and Kentucky. And I feel pretty good about Clark Jr. I'll put a little forecast in. Boom. I think Clark Jr. going to end up in a Michigan uniform. You want to follow all of this and be ahead of the game and have the intelligence before anyone else and accurately. Well, this is just part of why you may want to join up with the Maize and Blue Review by going to michigan.rivals.com. Football talk all day, all night. Same thing with basketball. Back and forth, the stories, the features, the numbers, the analytics. It's all there. I'd like to see you. That's where I hang out. That's where I'm at, talking about Michigan on the Maize and Blue Review. Go there today. One more time, let's all say it, michigan.rivals.com. We'll see you over there. It's the place to be. Now, coming up at the beginning of this month, which is now right around the corner, July is Wednesday, July 1st. So that is a week from today. It will be July 1st. The calendar will turn, and then Michigan is in the mix for California linebacker Kenneth Goodwin. And if you said you just have to make a prediction today, where do you think Kenneth Goodwin would end up? I would say Michigan. So Kenneth Goodwin also expected to be a Wolverine, and that is going down with the announcement a week from today. And then July has got a lot more that is happening. On the screen is a picture of Sharon Moore with a player named Donovan Webb, a four-star safety out of Frisco, Texas. And Webb is announcing on July the 3rd between Michigan, Kansas State, and Texas Tech. And if you had to guess today, let's all say it. Michigan would be the pick for Donovan Webb. So you're expecting to see Webb in a Michigan uniform. Michigan doing a good job in Virginia. Michigan doing a good job in Texas, maybe Hawaii. But Webb is expected to be a Michigan Wolverine coming up on July the 3rd. So that is good news for Michigan. And then we have a couple other ones. Travis Johnson, the July 4th announcement, which I am thinking that is going to be an arrangement of fireworks. They're going to light the wick, and then it's going to blow up a big maize and blue Block M into the sky in Virginia for yet another 6'4" wide receiver in Travis Johnson. Robinson today, Johnson on the 4th of July, expected to join the crew. And TJ has Georgia, Penn State, and Va-Tech. They'll all be working the phones until July 4th. But if you had to make a prediction today, I think maybe you'd say, I don't think maybe it's, let me retract that. You would say Michigan. Sometimes I just talk and it's just, things are coming out. Say it succinctly. Michigan for Travis Johnson. That is the expectation. So that's where we're at right now. All right, let's see what else we have here on the recruiting front. Okay, yeah, we have a couple of things. There is a tackle also on July the 4th who is making a pick. He's out of Texas. He's a 4-star. He's got Michigan and Texas A&M and Stanford in his final 4. And on July 4th, he's going to make a pick. Michigan in with a chance with turn time. Cool name. Calvin Russell III, who is a big-time wideout down from Miami to Florida, came in, and everyone is saying that it couldn't have gone any better for Michigan. Well, okay. No, I think it could go a little bit better for Michigan. The visit couldn't have gone any better, but it could go Michigan's way in terms of Russell III, who is expected to make his decision on July the 5th. And he's got all the Florida schools and LSU and Oregon. I don't know. Michigan did a good job. They've got a chance with Russell. Today, I was reading a little bit more about the Florida wide receiver. He also talked with Dusty May about the possibility of playing basketball, football, and then when football's done, you go over and play basketball. Michigan State has had a few different players try this. And for Michigan, I can remember who was that kid? Robbie Ray. He played baseball and basketball. There was also what was the southpaw? Spencer Britton from back in the day. He also, I think, was baseball. There have been a few baseball, football, but I don't know, basketball, football for Michigan, unless I'm forgetting. Benny Oosterbaan or back in the day, that happened. It was almost like high school. I mean, great athletes. They'd play all three, but you could see them playing too. But I don't know, Calvin Russell III, that would be cool. And just that it would be different. Plus, man, he's really good. Really good basketball player, really good football player. So, you usually got to pick one because you're trying to serve two masters there. It's pretty difficult to do. That takes a very special player. Michael Jordan couldn't do it. I don't know. Deion Sanders and Bo Jackson were able to do a little bit of stuff like that. But that we're talking about baseball and football. Oh, are we talking about playing basketball and football? There's a few tight ends, though. Antonio Gates, guys like that. Tony Gonzalez. There's a long list of basketball. You say football first and then basketball, whatever. I mean, those guys, some pretty good players. Who was the defensive end who played for the Carolina and was in the Final Four, and then was also he ended up, he's going to be in a Hall of Fame defensive end, was able to do that too. So it happens, but it's rare. And then Dorian Barney is a corner out of Carrollton, Georgia. He's got Georgia Tech, Penn State, and Texas A&M, and Michigan did a good job this past weekend, and there's a lot trending towards the maize and blue with DB, who's a CB, and he's going to make his pick on July 5th. So a bunch of different players interested, not only interested, but, Michigan right there, and it would not be a huge surprise when it ends up coming down to it. Colin, this is what happens when you get some good news on the recruiting front. You're getting ready for the upcoming season. You start saying, man, this thing, look at last year's recruiting class. Look at how this one is shaping up. And that's where you get something like Colin, who says Michigan's going to win another championship here soon. Maybe not this year, but in 2027. And I don't see, there's no reason for me to, I like when I see something, there's no reason for me to say, oh, no, Colin, wait a second, maybe you should tap the brakes on that. I think that's it's completely understandable, especially on a day like today. Just like Dougie likes the name Titan and Blade that are in this Zion, which is committed today, and he is asking if you can go back and remember the names Sword, Irons, Steel. These guys all played together. Steel and Sword on the 97 championship team. Irons, a two-time captain. How about that? It's some positive vibes from Corey, sending them all the way out to Hawaii. Colin, who made the championship prediction for 27, is the first to put in his prediction at 9-3. He is down on the, not down like looking down. He's just down. We've got it noted that he says 9-3. Mr. Martini is talking FanDuel, how the line has moved to Michigan up 9.5, and it was 8.5. That's exactly right. It was 8.5 on FanDuel. It has moved to 9.5. Last year, I think it was the other way. I think Michigan was 9.5, and then it moved down to 8.5, and be like, whoa, what do they know? You start getting word of the quarterback play, and I think that's what's going on here too. I think it's the quarterback talk. Keegan's playing the emoji game. which I enjoy. So we have a palm tree. We have some waves. We've got a kind of, I don't know if is that a hang 10? And that looks like it could be a surfer, Malachi Lee. Yeah, if Malachi was watching this, I think he would be like, yeah, kind of like that. What would he say? Is there something else besides aloha? Are they? No, I'm not. I was almost ready. There's a couple songs or two or three that you come up with where some. It's tough rolling out that Hawaiian stuff. But look, hey, if Malachi Lee on Friday, what's the song? I don't even know. I think it means like have a nice day or whatever else. But it's there. It's just not connecting to my mouth. Sam has the quandary of 9-3 / 10-2, maybe hard road schedule, especially with Coach Moore's suspension. So he's got 9-3, 10-2. Yeah, I get that you are putting two answers out there, but really, you got to pick one. You can't. It could be 8-4, could be 9-3, could be 10-2. The ball bounces, could be 11-1. No, you got to make a choice there, Sam, when it comes down to it. But you're thinking it out. That's okay. Vaughn's first delivery says the record will be what your betting site is predicting, 8 to 9 wins. Here's another one, giving you a range. Reasons: freshman quarterback and an unproven offensive line, go blue. Yeah, well, you've got to make that pick. That's the whole thing. You got to say it's either going to be 8 or you got to say it's going to be 9. Now that's it. Corey is thinking about getting past Nebraska, USC, and Oklahoma, and then the possibility of an undefeated season. I like people predicting undefeated seasons. I used to say prior to 2023 that I'm not picking any undefeated seasons. It just doesn't happen. It happened once in 97, and before that, I know there were some ties. They're like a 93 or whatever, which is kind of, I guess technically it is, undefeated, but they had the 3 ties. And you had to go back to like 50 years, and you're really going to be picking every year. People are like, undefeated, which is fun, but it wasn't really realistic. But I was there in 23 with I think most people predicted Michigan in 2023 were going to go undefeated. They're like, it's now. It has to be this year, now or never, and it was. They made it happen. So there you go. Hopefully it'll be better than the dumpster fire last year. There you go. If we can get Russell and Johnson, oh boy, it's on, no question. Oh, there it is. You're not. Peppers. Peppers was a awesome basketball player too for Carolina. Doug, thank you for that. For some reason, I couldn't remember. And you would think, with a name like Peppers, I would be able to remember that. All right, a couple more here. Mr. Martini saying that Paul Jokic played football and basketball. That's a good one. I think Jokic from the 70s. Hadley's making his prediction of 10-2 and playoffs. He's saying July 1st is a Tuesday. I'll buy your calendar, Hadley. I'm with it. Julius Peppers, Jabril Peppers, Julius Peppers. That's going to be. Mar is capitalizing and talking surprises. That Michigan is going to surprise a lot of media, a lot of teams, and a lot of fans. Vaughn is talking Kramer, one of the great athletes of all time. And I had put Oosterman's name out there. I think I did mention Kramer pretty quickly in there. Now we're just talking about great Michigan names, gold. is put in there. It's great to see Andres. He comes off the golf course for a couple of minutes. He's able to probably he got in an early 18, and so he was able to join in on the show. It's great to see him here. I kind of got my golf shirt for my birthday last week on. Andres, hope you're hitting them straight, keeping it going. That's good. Here's another 10-2. Another 10-2. We'll get there. Andres is making a prediction of Michigan demolishing Oklahoma. Powerful rushing, chaotic defense, and a potent passing attack led by Underwood. If that happens, Andres, a lot of the predictions of, boo-hoo 8-9 wins are going to change. That's it. That's what's going to happen. Ooh, Vaughn, so there you go. That's happening. Here he is. Here he is, Trevor McCue. Sometimes you have to walk in someone's shoes a little bit to kind of see, appreciate their work. And Trevor was making a lot of thumbnails for me over the years. And, we'd put them on the show and they're all awesome. And then I started, dabbling just over this last week or so of making some thumbnails, and I'm working at it like, wow, this is a lot harder. It's not just sitting down and telling AI like, hey, throw something together, make it look good, maize and blue, let's do it. No, you gotta take some time in doing it. I'm surprised that Trevor was able to, because a few times he's like, I'll put one together, and it came out. And I think because he did it so fast that I thought, wow, he must just say AI or whoever he's talking to, this is what I want, put it together and make it look great. And he was able to do that. But so I appreciate Trevor with that and the way it's happening there. Corey is bringing everyone down to earth here a second. He said, nothing wrong with being optimistic, but I'm being biased and bold. We're going undefeated or just one loss. I got to pin you down, Corey, again. I know, my own, here I am myself Monday saying a couple months ago I was 10-2, and then I downgraded it to 9-3, and that's where I was at on Monday. So it felt like playing both sides of the fence. What is weird is that it's coming down to, it's like the crossing the Rubicon or something else to go over to 10 wins. If Michigan ends up right now with 9 wins, it's not going to feel like, it's not going to be a great year. Maybe, you could call it a good year, but you're not going to be in the college football playoff. It's almost a pass-fail. You get to 10 wins and you get into the college football playoff. Maybe Michigan has a home game. Woo! Michigan in the college football playoff, no matter what happens in that first game, that feels like a success. And I really, I was thinking of myself, it's a fun game to play where, hey, what if I told you right now that you can have a Michigan home game? What if I told Trevor McCue? There he is on the screen. Welcome in. How about it? Trevor, surprise. Nice to see you. It's great. Trevor, let me just throw the question at you. If I could guarantee Michigan would have a home playoff game right now, but they wouldn't have a playoff game after that. Are you taking that? Take the deal. Are you taking the deal right now?
Yeah, I think the line is, I was going to ask you, how can you hear me? Yes or no? I think the line right now is being competitive in the Big Ten and making the playoff. If they can win a playoff game, great. But yeah, I was pretty jealous some of the teams with home playoff games last year. I think whatever the new playoff format going forward is, I know they've tried to protect the bowl games like crazy, but the home playoff game's the answer, man. If you can get an environment, a playoff game in Ann Arbor this year, take that. But I've seen the predictions. I think I look at last year and I've said to folks, hey, if you had competent quarterback play consistently, do you beat Illinois? Do you beat Indiana? Do you beat Washington? I say yes. So realistically, they should have been 9-3 or 10-2 last year if they had any passing offense whatsoever. So that's my thought going into this year as well. I think the defense is going to be top 5 in elite. I think the run game is going to be better. I think the line is going to be better, and the passing attack should be at least. I mean, you can't get worse, right? So,
passing
10-2 and getting into the playoffs should be the expectation, in my opinion.
Yeah. There we are, right on the line. It's great. What are you working on, Trevor? I saw Zion Robinson committed today, and then as he committed, I looked up and you had people were sending in shots of you working on your computer with your hands working there, and then all of a sudden you had the screen up, and I was like, wow, man, these people are right. Nice job.
Yeah, busy times, like little inside baseball. Obviously, a lot of these commitment articles we write ahead of time so we can be prepared. Usually we can do 1 or 2 at a time. I think I'm up to 14 potential pre-writes on commitments because of how many guys could drop in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So we've been really busy getting ready for potential commitments and trying to get some intel together. Like our boy Aiden this morning dropping prediction on Calvin Russell. So we're really, really busy just trying to catch up with a very, very hot Michigan recruiting. And then, dude, camp's 5.5 weeks away? We're not really far away. So I'm getting ready to start doing position previews. And then, of course, we've got our big On3 move over platform coming up in a week as well. So lots of stuff going on.
Woo! Wow. I could ask you a lot of different questions now, but you do a podcast. It's been a couple of weeks in a row on Wednesdays. Who's Got Next? You just referenced it. And you also said Calvin Russell the third. Did Aiden make a prediction?
Yes.
On Russell? What kind of prediction was that?
So he predicted this morning that Calvin Russell will end up choosing Michigan.
Woo! Wow.
So we've had some intel coming out of how well the visit went. Just some other notes, everything about, role in the offense's relationship with, getting to be around Bryce, but also his existing relationship with Brady Smigel. They have the same representation. And then what was told to be just I don't know what over dramatic adjective I want to use, but a very, very good NIL offer. I'll put it that way. I think once the doors opened to not just Miami, but some other schools, Michigan became a more viable option. I think the family and Calvin are very comfortable with the idea of being at Michigan. Look, I'm not saying it's a lock. We don't know, things change, but I feel really good right now about Michigan's wide receiver class being Jalen Pyle, Zion Robinson, Calvin Russell, and the other guy you have on the screen now, Travis Johnson. I think that's going to be in the 4 at the end of it.
Okay, so they take 4 wide receivers. That obviously begs the question about Sadler.
Yeah.
Why is he waiting so long? And they've had this relationship for a long time. I mean, he knows the situation. Is it like
I'll have to give you the generic answer if he's working through some things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know where Michigan fits into the equation with Sadler anymore, unfortunately. He's taken some visits to Colorado. Maryland was a surprise as well. He's really, really intrigued by the option of North Carolina and playing for Bill Belichick. That'd probably be my guess for him right now, where he would end up. Obviously, football-wise, in your backyard, C.J. Sadler's a guy you'd love to have at Michigan. If that path becomes viable further down the road in the recruiting process, great. But at this point, I don't see a path for Sadler coming.
But they sell him on coming in as a Travis Hunter type playing defense, and then work him in on offense. So you'd have 5 wide receivers, but really you'd have 4. No,
and that's not the problem, unfortunately. So,
what about now? I've got. You got time for a question or 2 more?
I got plenty of time, dude.
What about Russell? How open do you think Sharon Moore would be to Russell playing football and then walking over to the Chrysler Center and playing basketball?
So it's an interesting piece of this because he hasn't come in and said, I want to or I need to play both sports. The way I've heard it phrased is if it's something the school would be open to, then he would absolutely want to do it. I don't know. I haven't heard about him communicating with Dusty May at all. We haven't seen it since, Kelvin Grady making the switch. I guess you saw Keon Coleman do a little bit of it with Michigan State, maybe early in his career.
Oh yeah, I forgot about it.
Just being frank, and obviously you still have this year to develop. to see what happens with this wide receiver room. And it's hard to say a guy's going to be wide receiver 1 as a freshman. That's not the level of prediction I would make with Russell, but Russell is absolutely a part of the equation in the wide receiver room next year as a freshman. So if he wants to come in and make an immediate impact on the football field, I don't know if basketball is a part of the equation. He's absolutely talented enough to do it. Like, this isn't a guy that can play both sports. He could play both sports at an elite D1 level, right? Like, that's how good he is. I don't know if that's something he wants to do and potentially hinder what could be. We're talking about a guy that could be a top wide receiver contributor all 3 years that he's at Michigan and end up being like one of the best statistically players to come through here. That's the kind of ceiling he's got.
It's exciting just because the possibilities there. I mean, it's just exciting just to kind of looking at his tape and what kind of wide receiver he could be.
Yeah.
And he is listed at 6'5". What I find interesting is that there's a lot of times in these Monday press conferences or all the different press conferences that these coaches and specifically Sharon Moore goes through, and it's some of the stuff you're feeling like, it's a cliche or that's a throwaway line. But Moore said it. I don't remember the first time. I wonder if I could dig back and find. But he said, I really like size at these wide receivers. It may have been on the signing day news conference that he had for this last class because, Browder was in there and maybe that's what he was talking about. Like, I really like size with, I don't know if he said my wide receivers or the wide receivers are recruiting, but boy, it's looked like, he's just out there and he's set the parameters. Hey, if you're 6'4" and over, we're coming after you.
And fast, right? Like in the past, it felt like Michigan it was one or the other, right? You had to be a speed guy or a tall guy. There was no combo. And it was difficult for Michigan to recruit players like that because of the offense that they ran, right? And now with the reset with Lindsey and I think not having just only Bryce, but also Brady, being able to say, like, here's the quarterbacks of your career, arguably, right? And I know what's happening when these wide receivers are asking, hey, are you guys really going to throw the ball? Are you going to throw the ball around? They're telling them, yeah, if you come here, right? Like this is the pitch. And I think bringing in Soup Campbell, for those who are familiar with Soup Campbell, has been a massive addition because here's a guy who can say, hey, I was here for Braylon Edwards. I was here for Mario Manningham. Like, you remind me of these dudes. You're going to be that wave. We used to be wide receiver even when we ran the ball, right? Like, Michigan can do that. And I think that's the pitch. And obviously the chance of playing with a guy like Bryce and potentially Brady as well is huge. But yeah, they're going after guys that have the physical tools in terms of size, being able to go up and get the ball, but they're also speed. The Zion Robinson today, a 6'4" track star, gold medalist in the high jump in his state, but he also runs like a 10.9 100. You're getting this combo of everything. So really the route running seems to be the big thing, is just teaching these guys crisper routes, and that will come. And that's a big piece of Bellamy and Soup's job, is that development, but just physical tools. The last two classes and the guys they're potentially going to add to this one, we haven't seen guys like this in a while, not in Ann Arbor.
Yeah, I don't take everything away from the spring game, but one thing, I was thinking about with Underwood, he threw some passes out there. There were two that Browder could have had. There were one down the sideline that, the NFL type throw, and actually NFL type wide receivers, they go down there and they're, tight rope in the sideline, and the quarterback puts it like a 2-foot box, and Bryce, maybe it was a 2.5-foot box, but it was one that was close to being completed. It didn't happen. Then down there on the goal line, there was another one that was kind of a jump ball. It wasn't a back shoulder throw. It was on the sideline, but in the middle of the end zone. That was another one that Browder could have had there. Marsh, there was one that it might have been a bad throw. I'd like to see a different angle, but it might have been a good throw, and then Marsh might have dropped it. So what I'm saying here is that a lot of this with Underwood, and while I've been talking, you just mentioned Soup and Ron Bellamy, he's got to be excited. He's bringing in this kind of talent. If these receivers, especially on offense, you talked about, you think the offensive line is going to be better. Obviously, we're talking about Underwood. Tight ends look good. The offensive line looks good. If these wide receivers can step up this year, that's going to go a long way, because the defense, I think everyone's pretty sold that it's going to be, you said top 5. I'll say, heck, top 10. If these receivers could take a big step forward, maybe this team, we are talking about them being in the college football playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've beat this subject to death, right? Was it the QBs? Was it the OC? Was it the O-line? Was it the play calling specifically? Was it the route tree? Like I think it was a little bit of everything, right? Arguably. But Bryce and these receivers, the more time they have together and the more, they can build their relationships and get to know each other, I think they can be more efficient and start connecting on some of those passes. I'm not reacting on the spring game because if you did want to, take a lot from the spring game, then Davis Warren would have started over JJ McCarthy in 2023, right? Warren vastly outperformed JJ in the spring game. So I think Bryce, you keep hearing about he's having these 5 a.m. workouts with wide receivers individually and as a group. And he's working so hard to build these relationships and getting to know every wide receiver's tendencies. So hopefully you don't see these drops and you don't see these missed connections, because that's been the story of Michigan since Jim Harbaugh. They would call these deep shots at the right time, and for whatever reason, they just couldn't link up. So I keep telling people it's not about running more passing plays per se. It's just about executing better and actually getting some of these grabs and going out and getting receivers that can win those 50-50 balls, that can grab contested catches coming across the middle of the field, that have the speed and the physical strength to create yards after catch in the intermediate range. And then also, you add like another level for Bryce. I remember Matt Stafford and Calvin Johnson talking about this, where like if you imagined layers in terms of where you threw the football, Stafford always said with Calvin, there was this other layer where he could throw the ball high enough and he knew Calvin was the only guy that could go up and get it, right? Like that's the kind of players you're talking about here at 6'4" and 6'5" with these vertical jumps and a Calvin Russell and a Zion and a Browder, where you throw it where I'm either getting a catch or a PI. Right. That's the kind of players they're bringing in. But yeah, they've got to do it. Right. It's all a great sales pitch at this point, but you got to do it on the field now.
Man, you're bringing back some great memories. I they would bracket Calvin and they would still throw the ball over to him. There was a game against Cincinnati at Ford Field where it was probably a 50-yard bomb right in the middle of the end zone, and he was triple teamed, and Stafford just threw it down there, and he just popped up in front of everybody like a rugby guy on the sideline, and there he was, boom, against the Cowboys.
Cowboys win, right?
Yeah, there was a Cowboys one too.
Yep.
There was one at Dallas, and there was the 300-yard game that Calvin was awesome.
He just passed away, unfortunately, but the sports science segments that they used to do.
Oh, yeah.
The one on Calvin that always blew me away was his catch radius. From a standing position between leaping out, jumping up, whatever, he could stand in the middle of a 2-stall garage and you could throw the ball anywhere in that garage. And from a standing position in the center, Calvin Johnson could get to it. That's how big his catch radius was. Absolute freak, man.
I think he ran a 4.3 with borrowed shoes at the combine. I don't know why you would forget his shoes, but that was like the legend of.
How did a receiver that good end up at Georgia Tech?
Yeah, I don't know. He's from the state.
Crazy.
Maybe they put together a good NIL package back in the day. I don't know. Girl? I don't know. There could be a lot of things. Sometimes you wonder why they're doing it. All right, one more question. You've been doing a summer series on Bryce Underwood. You're doing all kinds of comparisons. I'm enjoying looking through all of it. It brings up a lot of memories like you just did here verbally. But the last one, you're comparing first-year freshman quarterbacks that went out there and the numbers, and give me a little bit of sense of what you're thinking about, and for all the people that are watching and listening to this, on what kind of effect, what kind of numbers, what kind of comparisons when you think about Underwood and what he might do as he is the presumptive starter for Michigan against New Mexico, August the 30th.
Yeah, if you search Amazing Blue Review, and then it was the By the Numbers Underwood series, we did top freshman seasons. I did top 10 quarterbacks under Chip Lindsey, top 10 seasons at Michigan, and then combined all of that data and used my Trevor GPT to get a realistic expectation of, different. We had a low, middle, and high of what Bryce Underwood could be in his freshman year, right? And you think about like a Trevor Lawrence, who, even though he didn't start early, he played a lot in those first 4 games before he eventually took over for Kelly Bryant, goes undefeated, wins a national championship, puts up ridiculous numbers. I think that's like the dream scenario is Bryce Underwood's coming in and leading you to playoff wins and having, heroic years. But there, there's those Heisman guys like your Jameis Winstons and your Manziels, but it's just, he's not going to reach that level right away. In his junior year, could he shatter Michigan records? I think he could be on that path, but keeping in mind that if he were to top 3,000 yards, that's automatically one of the top 2 or 3 passing seasons in Michigan history, right? So the big thing that came back on the data with him is controlling the interceptions. I think realistically, depending on what Michigan does offensively, somewhere between a 2,400, 2,700 yards season would probably be realistic, probably 20 plus touchdowns. Is he going to have single digit interceptions, or is he going to make double digit interceptions and make those mistakes? And when he throws those interceptions, are they going to be costly? Right? That's going to be really the big determining factor for Bryce this season and his development. Because if you're throwing him to the Wolves as a starter right out the gate, which I think they're going to, and I think you have to at this point, he's going to throw picks. He threw picks in high school. Like it's just going to happen. It's just not plausible that he's not going to throw interceptions. But is he going to be like JJ McCarthy? Remember how much we were talking about JJ was this big risk as a playmaker? I think people forget, like, that was the perception, was JJ was going to throw a bunch of picks, and then he ended up being a better game manager than we expected. So can Bryce come out and do something like 24-6, or is he going to throw 10 or 11 interceptions and really have to take his bumps? That's kind of the variable in terms of the expectations for him. And what he does as a runner too, that's going to depend on Lindsey. If I see another fake RPO, I'm going to lose my mind. Those better be gone, right? Like we pretend he has a chance to keep it. Like, don't even waste your time with that. Just give me the natural play action. But I think 2,500 yards passing, 400 yards rushing, 20 something touchdowns. And I'm going like 8 interceptions, because I'm going to be that guy and stand on the fence and not pick single digit or high double digit. But I do think he's going to throw a few picks that are going to be frustrating.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't say double digits. Well, great job, Trevor. I got basketball here ahead. I'm going to look at the draft for a couple minutes. And
draft's tonight, isn't it?
It is. It is. I'm going to talk about it a little bit. You can stay around for that, or you got work to do. What are you doing?
I can hang out, or I can go if you want to do your own thing.
You know what? Even though I am on here mostly, a lot of the times, not always by myself, but I like talking about.
I don't want to intrude. It's your show.
I like talking about the draft. Well, here's the couple things that I'm interested in, and the first one is Danny Wolf on where he may end up getting drafted. But just looking through the rest of it, Cooper Flagg, we do know that he is going to go number 1. And I was looking at the comp, and I heard some. And the first time I saw Cooper Flagg play, there was the number 2 overall pick in '97 was a guy named Keith Van Horn out of Utah. And yeah, Cooper Flagg looks like him. Cooper Flagg's not 6'10", but he's I think they have him listed here, just short of 6'8". But I understand that prediction, but it's always tough for people to say comparing white guys to black guys and vice versa.
I was just going to say that.
It's just a difficult thing to do. But if there was a comparison, that I think the Van Horn one, you understand it because he does kind of look like him and he does kind of play like him. But Kawhi Leonard is my comp.
Yep.
And then the only other one that I'm going to hit in terms of comparison is Dylan Harper. Looks like he's going to go number 2 for sure to the Spurs. And I saw a lot of Cade Cunningham comparisons, and I can see that the way Harper plays now. We didn't see him much against Michigan when he was hurt for that. He hurt for both games. Maybe he was. I don't remember seeing him against Michigan. So there you go. When it comes down to Harper, we do know that the red flag of this particular draft is right here in Ace Bailey, who did play against Michigan, but he didn't play well. So you might be, if you're a Michigan fan, saying, I'm not all that impressed with Ace Bailey, but I understand that. But I'm not very impressed with Ace Bailey because he didn't work out with anyone and he canceled. He didn't want to go to the Sixers. And I heard Jay Billis say he didn't hold that against him, that, he's trying to orchestrate where he's going to be picked. Well, you don't want to go to Philly because they're a tough sports town. You just start looking at the other teams. You want to go to the Hornets? You want to go to the Jazz? I can't believe that Ace Bailey wants to go to the Jazz. I know that he doesn't want to go to the Wizards. So then you just keep going down. You want to go to New Orleans? I don't know. New Orleans is nice, I hear. But I don't know, basketball-wise, if that's somewhere where you want to go. The Nets have a bunch of picks. Is that where you want to go? Maybe he's not going to want to. Nobody wants to go to Toronto. So maybe he's trying to orchestrate a free fall to Phoenix, they're doing a wholesale swap of their players. They got rid of Durant and everything. So that costs you about $4 or $5 million. So he's the red flag of this particular draft. I could see him having a free fall.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen estimates that he could cost himself up to like $15 million on his first contract. So, he's trying to set up for the second one. So, Billis might not care about the way he's conducted himself, but as we saw from some of the NFL reporting that came out recently about the collusion that exists, I think teams are hesitant to reward him because I can promise you there are agents watching this and going, hey, in the future, is my guy going to be able to dictate where he lands? Right? Is Bailey going to get rewarded for this? Now, more than likely, a team that trades up is probably who's going to be the one that picks him. I've seen Washington, which, would be hilarious. Like, you throw up the wall in Philly to go to Washington, that wouldn't make a ton of sense. I think Brooklyn is probably the spot he wants to go to most, but is a team going to trade up for him? Are the other owners kind of saying like, hey, like, let's not reward this dude and have somebody trade up to number 4 and take him? Like, I don't know. It's always an interesting element. There was some of that when players started opting out of bowl games, you remember, with college football, and it's like, okay, is the NFL going to punish them for doing this? And we saw not only did they could not care less. And now opting out is nothing. Everybody does it. It's crazy not to opt out. Right. So what trend is Bailey potentially setting? And you're coming off a year where you were with Harper at Rutgers and supposed to have like this great season and don't. Right. So I think there's already question marks with him. It's going to be a very interesting storyline for sure to see how far he falls and which team ultimately, I think, trades up for him.
Nothing against this foreign dude. I just landed on the Suns talking about Bailey while listening to you. All the other guys have their the ringer.com. They have their sketch artists, and they have him in color. This Noah guy from presumably an international player, looks like one of these mug sketches, like the like, hey, who's the one that grabbed your purse, right there. Everybody else.
That's terrible.
That is terrible. That's totally me. I apologize, and I like the Ringer. That's why I put him up here to end up. What about when we start getting to Danny Wolf territory? Are you thinking I'm thinking the back half of this draft. Are you thinking he could go even in the lottery, which is all the way up to 14?
You mean back half of the first round?
That's what I meant.
Okay, just check. I was like, what? Him getting invited to the green room was obviously a big deal.
Yes.
I think he could sneak into the lottery, but he's probably, I think, either the back of the teens or the early 20s. The rumor that we saw most recently, this is an interesting spot right here, is the Thunder.
Yes.
I think the Thunder is probably where you start thinking Danny Wolf could go off the board. I think he'd be a really good fit there. And there's some talk that he feels the Thunder would take him. So that's probably the high point for where he could go. Maybe he sneaks up in the lottery because somebody's trying to pick him in front of OKC, but I'd be shocked if he's not in the top, 25 or so, I guess. Minnesota's another spot. I think you could definitely see him as well.
That would be a nice Thunder.
Yep. Detroit. Womp womp.
This is where you wouldn't want to be if you're Danny Wolf.
Yeah. Jordan Poole gone.
Would you want to get, if you're sitting there at 18 and you're Danny Wolf, would you want to be selected by the Wizards? Your thoughts?
I don't know what their plan is. Like when they took on Poole initially, it was like, okay, get through the contract and whatever. But No, they seem like one of those franchises just kind of stuck in purgatory right now. I don't know what their plan is and what they're doing. I don't mind going to some of these lower teams that have some plan in place or some young core that you could see them jumping into. You know, the Thunder a few years ago taking Chet, they were a number 2 pick team, but you could see what they were building. The Magic, the Pistons are obviously another one, the Cavs at one point. All these teams that were in the top, 8 of the draft are now competing for conference titles or in the NBA finals and winning championships. You don't see that with a team like the Wizards. The Heat, I mean, I would go to Miami anytime, right? That would be that'd be a great landing spot for him. Pat Riley and that front office is always doing well. I'm torn on the Jazz. Ainge, and now his son has joined them as well. A lot of talk about they're going to go after Jaylen Brown potentially. I mean, the Jazz probably thought they were getting Cooper Flag until the night of the lottery, right? So they're a team that I think you look at how Ainge built Boston. Utah could be very, very good in the next couple years. So that's a spot I wouldn't hate going to either. But the Thunder, obviously, my gosh, what a dream scenario that would be.
That would be a dream scenario. That would be a dream scenario. Utah, seems like they like white players. I don't know. I don't want to play this white. I don't know. I don't think. I think they want to take
Brooklyn would be interesting with Juwan there.
What do they got? 4 or 5 picks?
They got 5 first-round picks, which you think, oh my gosh, that's a franchise turnaround, right? But in the NBA, like once you get into the 20s, these picks are complete lottery tickets. They're not worth anything. Because my thought was, wow, 5 first-round picks. Brooklyn could trade all the way up if they wanted, but like no one's going to really take them. The NBA draft has changed so much in recent years where, I remember anybody in the lottery was a guy that was going to be on your team and playing for sure, right? And then your bench, you could get really, really good bench guys in the second round. And, this is another interesting storyline right here.
The Orlando likes Michigan players.
Yeah. I've heard Orlando as well. Will Ishbia not let him slip fall? Will Phoenix come up to make sure the Michigan's, but
I think that could happen.
He went from lottery pick lock to now not even getting invited to the draft. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's why Ishbia. You get it. You have an affinity for Michigan State. You don't want to do too much of that. Just like Utah would be stupid if they were like, we really like these 4 or 5 players, but hey, Danny Wolf's white. Let's bring him. No, these guys are if they do that. And it would be interesting. I guess we're going to be talking about
McNeely at 27.
This is what they thought. And then
Traore,
you wouldn't mind.
I was just talking about this in a space with some folks. Like it's wild to me. You see these names of these guys that were so good in college and for whatever reason, their game's not going to translate to more than like a 10-minute a night guy in the NBA. And it's bizarre.
Well, this guy was one of my favorite guys to watch in the tournament, Cam Jones. He's awesome. And I just want to wrap it up with saying that I do believe, and this will sound like some hometown cooking, that I don't think Vlad Golden's going to get picked tonight. I'm not even sure he's going to get picked tomorrow night, but Vlad Golden's going to play in the NBA for a couple of years. He just has he's got a skill set. He can get in there on somebody's – you can't teach 7-1. He's pretty mobile. He catch those he's good on the pick and rolls. I don't know how much of that long distance shooting he's going to be able to perform once he gets to the league, but he'll play. And so that's if I'm making a couple different picks, I'll give you some, I don't know if you have any, if we call them hot takes or whatever, but on the whole draft that Vlad Golden will play, and the kid out of Duke, Knopple, is that his name? I think Utah, he will not make it past Utah. That's going to be my guarantee on that one. I don't know how hot that is. It's right around the area, but I'm going to guarantee that he's going to go. And then that Vlad Golden will play in the league for a couple of years.
Yeah, I don't know if I have any crazy hot takes. I would agree. I think Vlad does get drafted in the second round. But if he wants to sustain any sort of career, we've seen the NBA get interest in these guys, kind of these traditional centers coming off the bench, not necessarily as starters, but there's definitely a role for these more inside guys coming off the bench. But he's going to have to, I don't know if he's got to add muscle or what, but he's going to have to get better on the boards if he's going to want to stay in the NBA. but I think he'll get drafted.
I think there's a little bit of an interesting thing if you just watch some of the Danny Wolf highlights. A lot of people, I hear them. I put the Ringer stuff up there. I was listening to the Ringer guys talk about how they've been grinding tape this week, looking at all the different guys. And look, that's, you're doing your work, putting on the tape. We do it. I was doing it with Zion Robinson today when I said he's built like Randy Moss, and he's a long strider like Moss. I'm going to say that he was Randy Moss, but I was watching a highlight reel of Danny Wolf. And Danny Wolf, if I had not watched him play a game at Michigan and I just watched his highlight reel, I'd say, why aren't we taking this guy? Look at him. I mean, he is just, look at the passing, and he's throwing dunks down, and he's dribbling between his legs and no looking. I mean, he looks like he's got an NBA game all over. Now, he had a lot of turnovers and those kind of things. And look, he's projected to be a first-round pick. So there's a lot to like there. But the highlight reel, these guys just watched the highlights, and I can see why people would think we got a steal in Danny Wolf, man, because his highlight reel is legit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, he took Michigan in a rebuilding year, if you will, to the Sweet 16, arguably. So yeah, it's the turnover piece. So if you're a GM, you're going, okay, if in my offense, depending on tempo or, as an off-ball player or whatever, can I limit the turnovers but still allow him to? He's got to have the option to create his own shot. Otherwise, I think you eliminate what makes Danny Wolf great, right? So if he's at the perimeter and he's only taking a shot or dishing or setting up for a mid-range, well, you're eliminating what makes him good. So you have to be in an offense where he can still drive to the hoop and create, but can you limit the sloppy turnovers? And either you think you can or you can't, he fits. And that's the difference between top 15 pick or top 25, I guess.
There you go. Well, the last one, I asked people to put their prediction in, a lot of 9-3s, a lot of 10-2s. It was pointed out here. I also saw on the Den, on the Maize and Blue review, it was pointed out that FanDuel bumped up. They were at 8-5, and now they're at 9-5, which kind of puts it all in there. Trevor, if you have to, you make the pick. I saw your pick, actually, so I know what you're going to say. But if you had to make the pick today, what you think Michigan's record is going to be? I saw you on the Den last week, I believe, putting down your official at least June prediction for Michigan. What would you say?
Yeah, I'm pretty locked into 10-2 now, and depending on how those first 4 games go, right? Like, obviously, if you go through and you win at Oklahoma in that night game and you win Nebraska and you're 4-0, then 11-1 becomes more likely than 9-3 at that point, right? So that first stretch of 4 and then having the bye week is really going to be a huge determining factor. But yeah, I come back to, I think they're 10-2 last year with you could argue, I don't know if Mikey Keene's the right plug in, but like a Miller Moss or somebody of that caliber, if they would have gotten that in the transfer portal, they're probably 10-2 last year. They should have beat Indiana. They were down 17-0 to Washington, come back, and then they were in position to win, but Tuttle has his fumble, so you should have won that game. I'll give you Illinois then. 9-3 last year, right, is what they should have been. So Ohio State, the reason they've been losing to Michigan is because they don't care enough to like focus on us 365 days a year, and winning the Natty has made them care even less. I just don't see Ohio State coming in and winning. So, I mean, that's still a tough game, like realistically, but at this point, like what ground has been made up there and all the changes they've had. So get through those trap games, those tough road games. And yeah, I mean, you could argue 11-1 is, again, we're assuming best case scenario with the offense improving and the defense continuing the momentum from last year, right? But I'm not shocked to see Vegas up. And when I saw people talking 8-4, I'm like, I don't see 4 losses on the schedule. And if there is, we're having a lot different conversations about this program. If they're 8-4 and not in the playoff conversation, I think that's going to be a tough pill.
Well, getting into the college football playoff is what it's all about. Of course, you want to beat your rivals, but getting into the college football playoff, winning the Big Ten, that's still a goal. But that college football playoff, getting a home game, advancing through is something that you want.
How cool would a home playoff game be?
Oh man, that's on my wish list here. I downgraded a couple months ago to 9-3, and I still feel like that. I feel like that with
what are your losses?
I have Oklahoma, Nebraska, and USC.
Yeah, USC's, yep.
I'm going that way because I feel like, and I know it was the spring game, but it shows you what can happen when you have a freshman quarterback.
Sure.
You had multiple delay of games. You had a fumbled snap on a key down under center from Underwood. You had a miscommunication pick. Those things can happen with a first-time quarterback working with his wide receivers. And those are the things that I expect when he goes on the road against Oklahoma. Now, look, the running game can save him. The defense can really help. The wide receivers that we already talked about, those are going to be big factors in there. Underwood could end up being the greatest quarterback to ever play college football, but I still think those things, those small things for a true freshman that's not even 18 yet, for another month or so, will just trip him up a little bit. But that doesn't mean I'm down on him. Certainly not down on Michigan or anything like that. Again, I think national championships, Heisman's, all those things could be there. But I'm sitting. I'm not locked in because I might play my Michigan card at the end and just say, you know what, I don't want to do it. So, but that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at.
It's all fair.
All right. Well, great job. You know, you have to have so many things ready to go because we're looking at all these different commitments, getting ready to make their decisions, and it's all happening here. We got Malachi Lee. He's happening on Friday, right? He's going on. Clark is coming around. I guess I thought that there were 31 days in June. They're not, because the following days. Well, here's my work on the now that I've been. You saw my old Maize and Blue join up page. This is my new one. I'm proud of this one, Trevor. That's
yeah. No, your thumbnails are. I've been very impressed with your thumbnails. I'll have to send you a new one, a new template to work from with the branding and stuff. But yeah,
yes, that's happening on what, Tuesday with Kenneth Goodwin, the same day that he announces, right? So he's making he's going to have a lot to deal with when it comes to the On Three Rivals presentation, right? And then it just keeps going.
It keeps going. Yeah, you've got Donovan Webb, Turntine, Russell, Barney, Travis Johnson, the other receivers in there as well. So by July, 5th? Yeah, 5th, right? Yeah. After July 5, we're going to know what percentage of these guys Michigan was able to close at. And I think that's going to get us a better idea of like, hey, is this going to be a top 6, top 10, or top 15 class, depending on some of the closes here at the end.
I love it. Well, you're in the 99 percentile when it comes to covering Michigan. I love it.
Oh, thank you.
And great job. Looking forward to an exciting summer and really an exciting next 10 days or something, because it's going to be fast and furious. And it's a good time to, always a good time to join up with the Maize and Blue Review. But, if you're looking like, man, I want to talk Michigan, well, all day, all night, it's all there. So it's a good time to do it. And Trevor, thanks for your time. So it was a great surprise seeing you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. And I try to tell you as much as I can, but you're awesome, man. What you do for us in the show, you're huge, Dennis, and you have a loyal fan base that's in here consistently. So from Maize and Blue Review crew, can't thank you enough, man. We would not be the same without you. You're awesome.
We will see you over on the Maize and Blue Review on the Den shortly. We'll see you here on this very feed you're watching or listening to on Friday. Till then, Trevor McCue, Dennis Fithian, thanks for watching.